We're going to take a quick look at the Paracas culture, which comes to us from the south coast of Peru. It belongs to the early horizon, and that is, of course, the horizon of Chavin. It also belongs to the Chavin interaction sphere, so we're going to expect to find influences from Chavin here as well. We also expect local differences, in part because of the geography. The Paracas culture was located in a very dry region, a desert region, and the folks very early on had to develop water management systems and carefully determine how to create and maintain irrigation systems in order to promote agriculture. Looking at my map, you can find Chavin de Huantar up here in the highlands. The interaction sphere, the region of influence along the coast, is going to go all the way from the north down to the south. And right here in the Ica Valley, and close to, and incorporating the peninsula, referred to as Paracas Peninsula, which extends out into the ocean from the coast. This is the territory of the Paracas culture. As part of their, I'm going to call it local flavor, the Paracas culture provides in their art form a great love of color, so much so that they go to extraordinary technical means to achieve color, I'm going to say, as a primary goal in their creations. Paracas style also embraces curvilinear forms, whereas Chavin tended to be more rigid in its geometric forms and in, let's say, rectangular lines and angles. Paracas culture also is going to embrace local subjects, and we're going to see that particularly when we get to the textiles that we're going to take a look at. But let's now look at the ceramics. I know that Paracas is most famous for its textiles, but the ceramic ware equally is very, very interesting, and I think interesting in particular in terms of the way you can compare it to the production at Chavin. The pieces that you have on your left represent figure 42 from the textbook. Very close to them, I have what I think is a better picture and maybe even a better piece that is located on our right, and it is a work that is located in the Metropolitan Museum of Art. Both of these samples very clearly show that the artist has drawn from Chavin, and what you're looking at is a feline face on the front of the vessel, or on the essentially the front of the pot. The formula that's being used in the south coast is the double spout and bridge, and if you take a look at the top of our piece, you're going to see 1 and 2, and then the bridge between them. Often one of those spouts will be turned into a figure, and that figure will actually function as a whistle. In the case of the piece I'm showing you from the mat, what that means is when you go to pour your liquid out of this, the pot is actually going to make a whistling sound. So it is a kind of playful image. We have on the front, I'm going to call it a panel, the main panel. It is a feline image drawn pretty much from Chavin, but up on the double spout and bridge is a kind of cute, in comparison, figure. I think it's a birdie head. I can't see the other side of it, but I'm confident that it is likely to be a birdie. And that little birdie is going to make a whistling sound when you actually engage in the use of the vessel. I'd like also to suggest that the mat piece, the piece that's on the right, is perhaps a little bit later, if not more directly under the influence of local qualities in Paracas in the south coast, because in both of these samples we have a snarling feline being with canines that are visibly overlapping, and you can see at least one of them here pretty clearly. On the other side you can see one coming down and the other one going up. This comes out of Chavin. You can also see the pendant irises of the eyes, one here and one over here. These characteristics are shared with Chavin. The piece that's on the left is a little more rectilinear. The piece that's on the right follows a little more of the, I'm going to say, looser, more gently flowing lines. and there's a playfulness about it. The lines here actually form the eyebrows of our creature as well, our kitty cat, and this kitty cat has a kind of cute pug nose. The ears of our feline are up at the top. We've got one here and one here, and overall the whole face is kind of framed so that it is straight in center. It's a symmetrically located image, and in that part it also follows the formality of Chavine. But overall it is a much less formidable feline. It is a gentler kind of creature, and there is a greater quality of playfulness that is a part of it. It is also a vessel that does focus on color. I'd like to show you another one which will give you a little bit better idea of the degree to which Paracas embraces color. This piece is also located in the Metropolitan Museum of Art, and it is a feline, and it owes something to Chavine. But again, it's been transformed into a very local statement, in part with the use of color that decorates the surface of this. What the Paracas artist would do when the clay was hard but still pliable was to incise it to create lines. The piece would then be fired, and after it was fired, it would be painted with pigments that were applied with plant resin. This doesn't make them totally permanent, but it does make the object very, very colorful when it's completed. And I think that our Paracas artist was definitely going for color. In this case, it's also an example where you could definitely say we're painting between the lines. We put down the lines, and then after the pottery has been fired, you begin to paint the surface, creating, in some cases, almost a quality where the painted area seems to rise up from the surface. Again, we have an image that does draw on Chavine, and it owes something to Chavine. It is a feline figure, but at the same time, I'd like to again suggest it's a little gentler. It's a little, I hate to say this, but maybe cuter. It doesn't have the fierceness or perhaps the intimidating quality that we might find in the Chavine piece, such as the work that was used upper left for pulverizing the materials that one would use in hallucinogens. I think this comparison might make my point a little clearer. The image of our kitty cat on the right is not quite as fierce looking as the Chavine counterpart, even though they have striking similarities and clear elements that are derived from Chavine. It also embraces the curving lines like the last vessel did. If you go up here, and I think the eyebrow is actually kind of curling around into the ear on this vessel. And we have, again, a kind of cute little pug nose on our feline vessel. It definitely shows us the love of color also. And let me just take us to this one. You can see, particularly from the rear, with this amazingly striped tail on our kitty cat and a kind of polka dot head, there's an element of playfulness, of fantasy, of the imagination, and of a free play with color, which seemed to have been so important to the artists at Paracas. This is figure 43 in our textbook, and when you're first looking at this, you might think this is Paracas over the top, and to some extent that is true. This is reasonably unique to the South Coast and to Paracas, so much so that archaeologists have had to come up with a new name for it, and what they call this creature, I'm going to call it a creature, is the oculate being. And that is based upon the really, really large eyes that this figure has. It is ceramic, and again, it is resin. Between the lines, after it's been fired, the pigments have been added to the surface, and they are adhered to the surface with the use of resin. The eyes on this are decidedly large, and that we think is a reference to the shaman's vision. So it is entirely possible that this was once attached to a mummy bundle as a mask, and we'll see a mummy bundle in a minute. Those large eyes also refer, we think, to nocturnal animals, and probably all of you, when you're driving, have seen the glare in the eyes as your headlights hit an animal, something like a deer, or perhaps a fox, or perhaps a dog or a cat. But during the nighttime, when you are out looking at animals and you see their eyes flash back at you, it is otherworldly, it is mystical. It belongs to the world of magic and of the shaman. It is also probably a reference to dilated pupils, and that, of course, is going to go along with taking hallucinogens, which would allow the shaman to go on his journey from one level of reality to another. The snakes in the New World, particularly in Peru, also often function as vision serpents. In other words, they're referencing the shaman's experience. And in particular, as you look at them slithering over the surface and wiggling, it does suggest the idea of movement. They also extend from the surface like rays, suggesting energy, movement, flux, and power. Perhaps this also is intended to reference the sun, but I am not certain of that. The serpent has also been applied in a way that, again, this is Paracas, so it is very playful. In the lower portion of the face, right about here, we have a serpent that comes in as the mustache of our being, the body of the being. And under that serpent, there's a mouth. The mouth is located right here. Looks like it's grinning and happy. And this is usually described as a tongue that is protruding out of that mouth. You can also find a serpent up here that helps to form the eyebrows for this creature. And as you're looking at this creature, you might be wondering, well, what have they done with the nose? The nose, quite clearly, I think, is the world's largest nose and strangest nose, because it is an attachment that projects straight from the surface of the ceramic piece. In the frontal view that we have in the upper right, you can see it projecting towards you and make out pretty clearly that the artist did intend it as a nose. At the very top of this, right here, is the actual body of the shaman, or maybe we can go over here and see the body of the shaman. The last serpent comes out of the figure, and actually, at least I think, forms the arms of the shaman's figure at the same time. So it is a creation that is playful, that certainly is an abstraction, and also suggests some of the beliefs, we have to assume, of the folks in Paracas, particularly focusing on transformation and shamanism. This is a side view, so you can see the thickness of it. I had the opportunity, there are incisions in it so that it could have been attached to something, and I suspect that that's how it was used, that it was attached to a mummy bundle. If you look at the great profile view we have of that nose, I think those lines are intended to suggest the nostrils of the nose. So again, extraordinary, fantastic, belonging to the world of fantasy and playfulness. And a closer look here. This is our shaman, and that's the pair of snake heads, the double-headed snake, that I'm suggesting might form the arms of the shaman. And this could be the body of the shaman with his little toes terminating the figure. I've got to say, when I look at this image, though, I'm thinking of gingerbread cutouts. There is a cuteness to these very simplified, very energized, and also very colorful forms.